Queen Elizabeth II loses one of her pearls. The Caribbean island of Barbados has renounced the British crown and declared to be a republic. The judge Sandra Mason was sworn in as the first female president of the island state at midnight on Tuesday night in the capital Bridgetown. She replaced the British monarch as head of state on the 55th Independence Day of Barbados and almost 400 years after the arrival of the first English settlers. Heir to the throne Prince Charles travelled to Barbados on behalf of the Queen to attend the handover ceremony, during which the royal standard, the official flag, was lowered and a military salute was given to the British royal family. However, the Caribbean island remains a member of the Commonwealth. As in many other countries, the role of the Queen as head of state of the former colony was recently purely symbolic. For many of the almost 300,000 Barbadians, the British Crown also represents foreign rule and a brutal legacy of exploitation of slaves. It is time to leave our colonial past completely behind us. The Barbadians want a Barbadian head of state, Prime Minister Mia Mottley emphasized in the annual so-called throne speech in September 2020 when she announced the transition to a republic. Mason read the speech in her previous role as Governor General of Barbados, that is, representative of the Queen. In October of this year, the Parliament of the Caribbean state elected 72-year-old Mason to the newly created office of Head of State. Mottley remains head of government. The reaction of Buckingham Palace was cautious. The matter was a matter for the government and the people of the Commonwealth state, it said in September 2020. Prince Charles, who represented his 95-year-old mother in Barbados, emphasized there, even if some things change, some things will stay the same. For example, the close and trusting partnership and shared values. The Commonwealth of Nations is a loose association of states that emerged from Britain's former colonies. The organization is headed by Queen Elizabeth II. Barbados gained independence from Great Britain on November 30th in 1966, but the Queen has remained head of state until now. Most recently in 1992, Mauritius, a Commonwealth member, broke away from the monarchy. The first English settlers came to Barbados 394 years ago. Soon they enriched themselves by growing sugar through African slaves. In his book, The First Society of Black Slaves from 2016, the Barbadian historian Hilary Beckles described the island between 1636 and 1876 as the most systematically violent, brutal and racially inhuman society of modern times. Because of this history, there are calls for reparations and votes against the visit of Prince Charles in Barbados, as the activist Suleiman Bulbulia wrote on Monday in the British newspaper The Guardian. At the same time, the country with almost 300,000 inhabitants is also called Little England due to the strong influence of British culture. Of course, Barbados will maintain a close relationship with the UK, said Bulbulia. But this is a new era. He says, as for Little England, these times may call for a new nickname. British colonialists abducted enslaved people from Africa to Barbados between around 1627 and 1807 to cultivate the island's sugarcane fields. Barbados became the focal point of the barbaric transatlantic slave trade. Today's population of less than 300,000 people is predominantly of African descent. For them, the new move means a detachment from the colonial legacy. However, Barbados will remain a republic within the Commonwealth, a grouping of 54 countries in Africa, Asia, America and Europe. The Barbados celebrations comes at a time when the island nation is struggling with inflation, as supply chain disruptions drive prices up in a country that has to import the most goods. The tourism industry, an important part of the economy, is still recovering from previous travel restrictions caused by the corona pandemic. The English captain John Powell claimed the uninhabited island for the English crown in 1625 after Portuguese conquerors had expelled the indigenous people 100 years earlier. The name Los Barbados is derived from the aerial roots of the fig trees on the island, which are reminiscent of beards. In the period that followed, the island flourished due to the sugarcane trade, which was, as I said, mainly based on slavery. After the London House of Commons in Westminster and the House of Assembly in Bermuda, the Parliament in Barbados is the third oldest of today's Commonwealth countries. The House of Burgesses was convened for the first time as early as 1639, and in 1652, after disputes with the British Crown, constitutional principles such as freedom of religion, the rule of law and property rights were enshrined in the Charter of Barbados, but initially only for landowners. After the slaves were freed in 1834 until the country became independent in 1966, these rights were gradually extended to all Barbadians. Most recently, there had been tension between Britain and the former colonies over the so-called Windrush scandal. This was about compensation payments that the British government was actually supposed to pay to immigrants, especially from the Caribbean, because they were mistakenly treated as illegals by the British government in 2012. This suddenly deprived many families of their livelihoods. Many Barbadians are still waiting for their money. This scandal may have accelerated the departure from Great Britain, says Guy Hewitt. He says, England, which invented the rules for fair play, broke them all in the Windrush scandal. People are angry about it, and that really raises the question of whether we are still one big family in the Commonwealth. There's simply no longer the feeling that we are all united under the Crown. Well, that does not mean, however, Hewlett believes that the Queen, even in Barbados and the Commonwealth, is not given the utmost respect. Hewlett says, many of the nostalgic feeling of losing someone they have long felt a bond with. Not everyone is happy about Charles' visit, though. Heir to the throne, Prince Charles was invited to the ceremony in Barbados as the future head of the Commonwealth and is also attending. Buckingham Palace said the establishment of a republic was a matter for the government and people of Barbados. Charles addressed his own close association with the island, which he established more than 50 years ago, at the ceremony shortly after midnight on Tuesday. He visited for the first time the Republic, and on the fact, in his opinion, the close ties and common values that bind the Commonwealth countries will continue to exist. But not everyone on the Caribbean island is happy with the royal visit. Activists of the Caribbean movement for peace and integration demanded in local media that the royal family should stay away, apologize for the slavery, and pay compensation for it. Others had criticized that the constitutional change should have been confirmed by a referendum. So it is only a political decision over the heads of the residents who would follow the transition to a republic with little vigor or even distrust, they say. The question for the royal family in London is whether the move away from Barbados, if that is a first spike in the British Crown that other states could follow because they no longer find a monarchy to be up for the current times. Former Queen's Press Secretary Dickie Arbiter is already pondering efforts in Canada, New Zealand and Australia, and historian Robert Lacey, who has written a number of books on the British royal family, sees the Queen as the central figure for cohesion of the Commonwealth. He said, "The Queen managed to turn the Commonwealth, the old British Empire, into something new and something unusual and wonderful. Historians will call this the great achievement of her reign. If the Queen has travelled to the Commonwealth summits every 4 years, some leaders have seen her there as some kind of white goddess. That may not be politically correct, but she liked it." And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.